Hello and welcome to Product and Cake. We are here with Minerva Tantoco. She was actually the very first CTO of New York City, but not enough. She also founded her first AI startup in 1985. So we are looking forward to a lot of experience and a lot of stories, and the overarching question how to make a role reliable in an uncertain world. So it is a fully packed episode. Unfortunately, and that is why I do the moderation here all alone, is Gonche is today in sick leave. She lost her voice. So Gonche, when you hear that, we miss you. Next time we need you again. But now we are looking forward to bring you Minerva. Minerva, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Paul, and feel better, Gansha.
My check-in question for you today is, how do you visualize a year?
That's a very interesting question, Paul. Well, since I'm a planner and I do a lot of roadmaps and things like that, it really looks very much like an arrow pointing to the right, and then with the lines to signify either months or quarters. So, kind of mathematical linear view of the year with the idea that I'm going to populate it with the things I want to see.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, from a technical and from a CTO leadership perspective, maybe that is the only shape possible.
Funny, my daughter once asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I draw boxes and lines."
Yeah.
So it was the simplest explanation to a very small child what a technical architect does. I draw boxes and lines and arrows.
Yeah. Yeah. And nowadays we are doing video calls all the time.
That's right.
My
Right.
children already starts to draw their own computers on paper with a lot of boxes and faces inside because they see us parents always in video calls.
No.
No,
Well,
they sitting downstairs and have also their video calls. Yeah, for me, since the kids arrived, I see a year really more on the vacation, the school breaks, because that is always very, very important to plan around. So it is off time cold, off time hot, and then off time Christmas. And that is somehow where all the boxes needs to be placed around.
oh, very good. Very good. Yeah. No, I remember what that was like. My little baby is 28 years old, so it's been a
Oh,
while
wow.
I have to work with the school schedule, but
Mm,
yeah, that is most definitely defines your time for about 18 years.
yeah, I can imagine. I would like to ask you, maybe start with a brief introduction. And you founded your very first startup already 41 years ago. And yeah, tell us what was the startup and how do you found it?
Well, so I had gone into college as a pre-medical student. My goal was to eventually become a doctor, possibly a brain surgeon. And so I was very interested in the brain. And so I took the first, even courses in high school on neuroscience and neuroacoustics, really trying to understand how the brain works. And then during school, I was taking neurophysiology and neurobiology and psychology. And one of the classes required using a mainframe computer called a VAX computer. Um, and we were using it for, statistics analysis. But then I discovered that you could take a course, in writing code. And then I learned that you could write code that simulates human thinking. This was around the time, very early days. There was a product called Eliza, which was a speech. It was meant to be like cognitive behavioral therapist, and it would repeat back your questions, and it was one of the earliest chatbots that I think it was created in the 50s, 1950s.
Mhm.
Um, and so then I thought, oh, this is a great way to study, thought and reasoning, is to use a computer to further understand it. So that was when I fell down the rabbit hole of artificial intelligence. I started programming in Lisp, Lisp processing, and doing simulations and writing even at text-based games, and all with the idea that you could simulate human thinking with a computer. And I gave up my plans to go to medical school, much to
Mhm.
my parents' chagrin. They were not happy. What happened to our doctor? Um, and I was on vacation in Silicon Valley in 1985, and I met some folks who said we were starting an AI company, an expert system company, with the idea that you could uh, codify and code and the knowledge that a management consultant uses when analyzing financial statements. And it was like management consultant in a box. And I said, "Oh, well, this is what I do. I'm doing this in school right now." So I joined them, and it was called at that time it was called EFS, but it later became Manageware. It was an expert system designed for chief strategy officers. We would take all of the data, which was in mainframes at the time, um, and put it in put it into our analysis program, and it would give you sales forecasts. It would analyze your cost of goods sold. And this, just to level set a little bit, this was at a time when the Mac had just come out 1 year before,
Wow.
1984.
Yeah.
So personal computers were just beginning. And also, spreadsheets were just beginning, and they had two dimensions. But our software had 13 dimensions. So instead of just X and Y, it had 13. And all of those object oriented cells were aware of the other 13 dimensions. And then we applied algorithms to analyze numbers in a 13-dimensional model. So it's a little bit ahead of its time. And then in year two, we decided that we would um, port from a list machine to the PC. At the time, Windows had just come out. And so we rewrote the application in C++ so it could run on a PC. And so um, I joined in the summer of '85, became the first product manager um, for the tool, and then I went back to school in the spring of '86 because I had to finish my degree. Uh,
Mhm.
so because I couldn't double major in cognitive science and philosophy, I ended up with a philosophy major. So people are often quite interested in how a philosophy major went on to write 4 US patents and AI and things like that. And so that's how it started, really, just from a kind of weird overconfidence and, looking at the opportunity to say, how can I take the knowledge of someone and put it into an expert system. And also, for a while, I was a knowledge engineer. That was the name of the title at the time. The
Oh,
idea was
wow.
human knowledge and engineer it into an expert system, and it was fell into what was called decision support. So
Mhm.
I know these are ancient terms, but when I think back, I don't see the use cases much changing. But that's how we did it, and we eventually sold the company. So my first startup was a successful exit um, 5 years later.
Yeah, congratulations to this one. Knowledge engineer sounds very much like something we will see in the near future again. I'm pretty sure that is definitely something we need
Yeah,
to take
let's
care of.
bring back that title. It's a great title.
Everything is coming back. But I really love the story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I hear it is again curiosity and also the courage to try out something that maybe interests you, right? Where you feel a spark and motivation to solve a difficult problem. And you jump on it, and that leads you into a super successful career in tech. And it also led you to the situation that you became the first CTO of New York. Tell us about this one. So, how does it come, and why a city needs a CTO?
Um, yeah, that's another interesting story, and you're absolutely right, Paul. It is about curiosity driving every decision I've ever made, actually. And sometimes, even when other people don't understand or have never heard of it before, um, that's not a reason not to do it. It's a reason to say, well, then I guess I'm going to be the first. Um,
Yeah.
and so, it does take a certain kind of confidence, or I don't know, w- willingness to fail is also another component of this. The idea that, well, I believe it works, and I'm listening to what everyone says, and this is very relevant to the CTO of New York. So I had spent, after the startup, you know, done a ton of interesting things, senior product manager at Palm, and, then another dozen years or so in financial services, had written, the 4 patents in AI with Fannie Mae, and then, across very large financial services firms, and spent 2 years in Hong Kong running Asia Pac as CTO of the region there. And then I got a call. I gave a speech um, about how to deal with multiple jurisdictions and all the different governments I had to work with when I was running this regional, you know, um, technology strategy. And in the audience was someone from the search committee for this first ever chief technology officer of New York. Now, I grew up in New York. I didn't, never was a CTO. So I get this email that says, we'd love to talk to you about this new role. And I honestly thought it was a prank, right? Because I grew up here. I was like, there's no CTO of New York, What do you
Yeah.
it said .gov on the email, and I showed it to my friends in Hong Kong. They said, "Well, it looks legit." And so answer, and then they said, "Yes, the meeting's in City Hall." I was like, "Okay, that's a real place." And so, in 2014, uh, I was appointed the first ever chief technology officer of the city of New York. And what's great about being the first one is you get to do the blueprint, right? So, architects love making the blueprints of things and defining what needs to be built, right? And so it was such a unique opportunity, to help define what does a CTO of the US's largest city,
Mhm.
what do they need to do? And I worked closely with not only the selection committee, but also with various folks, that I knew who were in other parts of the government, and helped to define what that role is, for the city of New York.
That is that is very beautiful, and I hear so much joy and excitement in your voice. That is so awesome listening to you. Do you have an explanation where this is coming from? Because I also meet a lot of people who are somehow interested, or they say, "Hey, I saw this need, or I have that idea. I did now some prototypes, but I'm not brave enough to step into." And I don't. A lot of people don't feel the joy of making this blueprint, right? A lot of people are expecting, hey, give me the blueprint, tell me exactly what you want from me, and then I can perform it. I can deliver great outcome. But where is it coming from that you feel so comfortable in front of the unknown?
Well, I think everything had certainly led me up to that point of the CTO where, you know, I already felt enough confidence, but leading up to that was when you see a need and figuring out how to fix something, I think I'm inherently a problem solver. And so if it's presented to me as a puzzle, I will try to solve it. And so,
Hmm.
um, you know, if and it helps if people say everyone's tried it and no one could fix this before. Then it's like a problem that's to puzzle with a challenge. And that's a certain type of personality for sure.
Hmm.
And I think for me, my whole career has been discovering that that is my superpower and not
Hmm.
necessarily a detriment. Because also, what might happen is, well, that's not what I asked you to do. I asked you to do this, and now you're doing this. But it's like, well, yeah, but this is actually solving the problem. There were many instances with that. It's like, well, I remember there was one problem where it was such a simple database problem, but it seemed like to me obvious the solution wasn't to there was you had to put a code on a project, and there was so much trouble matching the project with the code. And I just said, well, why don't you put the code at the beginning of the project? Like to me, it was really obvious. And so,
Yeah,
it's just sort of I guess the way my mind works. Maybe all of the training I had done thinking I was going to be a doctor, I sort of look at and diagnose something and then try to figure out the cure. Maybe that's where it comes from.
yeah, maybe. But I also love that you say it feels so obvious, but then taking the courage to say it, because it is also a reflex of us humans to say it is so obvious. Most likely everybody knows it. Better I say nothing. But in reality, nobody thought about it. Or for other
Mhm.
people, it wasn't that obvious.
That's right. That's right. And, I did get a lot of good mentorship and encouragement along the way. I remember
Hmm.
this one set of meetings. I would just sit quietly in the meeting and then afterwards tell, my friend, oh, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And finally, you know, my client actually said, why don't you bring this up during the meeting? This is really smart.
Nice.
You
Yeah.
should talk. And then, and sometimes it takes a leader. And I try to do this with my own teams. I try to make it a space where people can bring up issues or,
Hmm.
without any fear. In fact, in my last startup where we started a bank, we had a meeting every week called What Could Go Wrong? And I
Hmm.
purposely set it up so that if you it was a safe space to bring up issues, concerns, risks, potential blockers, delays, because I realized that we had very little time to go back and redo stuff. And so I wanted to know ahead of time what the team was seeing as potential issues. And I know that humans don't like to bring up problems all the
Yeah.
time. And because often they're not rewarded for this. So in my own teams, I try to create a space where it's absolutely okay. I often say, tell me if I'm wrong. What am I not seeing?
Hmm.
Uh, so that they know they have permission to bring up these concerns. And it's incredibly effective. I saw someone from my former engineering team the other day, hadn't seen him in 5 years. And he said that was one of the best teams I ever worked on because you
Wow.
sure that everyone could bring in what they were thinking and they weren't going to be um, penalized for it.
Yeah. And also, as a leader, making explicitly this room available is super important, and not trying to say every time in the one-on-one, yeah, whenever you see something, please call it out and you can always tell me if you have some doubts. No, make it explicit that this is the time now to bring up this kind of questions or thoughts. I would like to go back for a moment to your time as the CTO of New York,
Yeah, sorry.
because my I can only compare it with the development of tech products, and usually a CTO have a counterpart, the CPO maybe, or someone else responsible for the product, to work from the technical side. What is the product of a city? Is there something like that? Was that the kind of thinking you had back in the time, or what was the essence of the CTO role? How did you created it?
Yeah, very. This is really excellent because to go from private sector to public sector um, is a huge change. I do encourage people to do it because I believe that a lot of the knowledge back and forth is extremely useful in both directions. But I also made sure that my team also consisted of people who understood the government and how it worked and all the constraints and other concerns. But I think that the product is has many dimensions. One is, what are the outcomes for a particular city? Maybe it's safety, maybe
Hmm.
it's equity, maybe it's revenue, economy. Um, is it jobs, education? So interestingly, those are the products, right?
Yep.
um, and
And
so
KPI definition.
and so at the end of the day, what do the residents of that city, what do they look for? And what in some ways, what can only the government do, which is largely around protecting the public, um, protecting the consumer. So that's why there are, rules and regulations. That's why we have speed limits, right? There's not a private company to make this. Private company makes the car, uh, but the government says this is the speed limit that is safe around a school, and that is another way to help assure the safety of that. And then how you do it? Well, maybe you put cameras, maybe you put big signs, speed bumps. How
Hmm.
you achieve this safety around a school, is part of the and more it's built on technology.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think the products that um, I personally proposed, and when I came on, my goal was to make New York City a smart, innovative, and tech friendly city.
Hmm.
At the time in 2014 was really the early days of the concept of a smart city. Um, the idea that we wanted to attract more technology companies to come and build their headquarters in New York City versus the West Coast of the US. Um, and, so it was economic, but we also wanted to build it in such a way that everyone in the whole city would benefit from, the technology sector.
Hmm.
And, in the 10 years since, the technology sector is one of the largest in the US. But we also did some strategic leadership things, which were not specific technology. So we put computer science in all the public schools because we wanted companies to have people to hire, right?
Yeah.
And so, you come for the universities here, of course, and all of the innovation, but also the students in public schools. It's the U.S.'s largest public school system in the U.S. With 1 million children
Wow.
in the schools here. Um, so it's as large as some small countries. That's just the school kids. And so, so a CTO was also responsible for the strategic leadership that aligns with the goals of the outcomes of the city. And then internally, I think, there's really the innovation and modernization. Governments typically have, older technology. There's a whole variety of reasons for that. So how do you innovate in a way, in our case, a 400-year-old, city? Um, how do you provide policy? So that's another component. A little bit similar to, CTO tech policy, right? But the effect of it is, so CTOs typically they'll set standards. They'll say you
Hmm.
have to follow these security standards and so forth. Use these tools. Um, and in a city government, that's an even bigger responsibility. It's setting the policy across all of these agencies. And if I could pause a little bit and tell you, to give you an idea of the scale of New York City, it's 325,000 employees
Wow.
for the city of New York. It's actually the city's largest employer. There were over 40 agencies. There may be more now, and another dozen mayor's offices. So each of them had CIOs running the operational tech.
Hmm.
Uh, at the time, the annual budget for the whole city was between 90 to 100 billion per year. So that was the amount that would go through the Department of Finance, taxes, parking tickets, property,
Hmm.
all that, about 100 billion a year. Um, so that gives you an idea of the scale of a city like, and a million school kids, 35,000 police. I mean, you can keep going on, but and one CTO, right?
One CTO. And when I am thinking of a small startup that is growing and maybe went into a growth phase, and then suddenly there are 50 people, then you have already such a huge alignment effort and so many people who are thinking about different approaches on how to move forward. I assume that is a complete different level on the size you were describing. So did you had the chance to bring in r- technical innovations or technical products, or did you had engineers who built something, or was it really like the strategic and the decisions on the direction?
Yeah. I had the opportunity, the role has evolved, and I'll tell you more about where it is now, 10 years later. But yes, so the answer is yes. It really did encompass any opportunity to make the city more modern. So included, for example, helping internal development teams follow more agile development. Um,
Hmm.
so that's, the dev teams themselves, and moving into that. We've also brought in new technologies that were largely what I'd call Internet of Things, IoT, so Link NYC, or the public Wi-Fi kiosks that are on every street corner, because we had to replace all the payphones with something, and we didn't want to get new payphones. The year was 2014. No one used the payphones anymore, and they didn't work half the time. So that was a big initiative, and that was an opportunity to create a citywide IoT policy, which now was signed on by 33 different cities. It's actually still online, iot.gov for New York. 33 cities all over the world agreed with our guidelines. And
Hmm.
so it became a global guideline for municipal IoT. It included operational maintenance, but also privacy policy, community involvement. Um, but we use that initial thing. And because we also, in many cities, have cameras, and we have GPS on the buses to help them be more efficient. How do you make more efficient garbage pickup? So all that stuff I was really, really excited about, because it sort of made all the technology, real.
Yeah,
Um,
Mike.
on the internal side, and then each agency has different needs, right? So yes, maybe the Department of Sanitation does need logistics software so they can route more efficiently the garbage pickup and only pick up full baskets, things like that. Um,
I, ca- I can imagine that there are a lot of interesting new services, and our whole global society is moving into a much more technical driven world super rapidly. So making cities smart, innovative, and tech friendly is maybe something that is relevant for every city, more or less. Do you think in the future every city will have a CTO and call it like that and have the expectations on this tech oversight you were just describing?
I hope so. I think, if the goal was to make the lives of New Yorkers better,
Hmm.
don't do something unless you can actually show that somehow the lives will be improved or, give more opportunity or improve education. It's not technology for technology's sake, and then you have all of the constraints that a large city um, would have, which is absolutely test within the community first, get community input, make sure that privacy is protected, make sure that, um, you are you are including the benefit to all, not just the nice neighborhoods, this kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
and so this is where all the interesting conversations happen, which is what does that mean and how do we put it, But we also use technology internally. So, when we were doing the pre-K program, we had to use some predictive analytics to figure out where are the right places to build these schools,
Hmm.
where it can help with urban planning, with building. What's the analyze. We did one project which I loved, which was, it was the trees count. We counted how many trees are in New York, and then measure the green space in a city,
Hmm.
for its cooling effects. So,
Yeah.
yes, every city should probably have someone whose role it is to help define how technology can make the lives of the residents better.
Yeah, making the lives better. And what I also really appreciate is bringing this way of thinking and also the way of working into the governmental structure and into, yeah, into the people that are maybe not that connected to the private sector but could benefit a lot from it. In Germany, we have actually a company that is called Digital Service, and they are organizing a fellowship. It is called Work for Germany, and you can apply and then work for a few months into a governmental institution to, yeah, to
Mm.
share your thoughts and your experiences and help to move something forward. Do you know if any other city have a CTO?
There are quite a few in the US. I know, certainly, and sometimes they have different titles, but Philadelphia had a CTO. I actually knew him as well. And then, of course, at the federal level, there's a CTO that's much more around policy, I would think. Um, and then depending on the organization, like San Francisco had more of a CIO for that area, but it was a similar role in that, you know, and there's some cities have a chief digital officer, which I think Berlin might have.
Hmm.
But I think the difference there is that, and maybe someone in that office is meant to be the more technical person, really about architecture and engineering, because so much of what you can do depends on your technology infrastructure.
Yeah, true. Most likely someone accidentally is more interested in technology and then unfortunately need to take care about all of that. But what I really love at that story is to make it so explicit and to say,
Mhm.
hey, all the question will go to the person who's holding that title. And this person can also pass the way forward and change things and have this massive understanding that you brought to the role of the private sector, of startups, of all the things that are going on and that are accelerating at the moment like crazy with the AI wave and the massive change in the industry. We are all more or less forced to define our roles into the future. So I would love to hear your thoughts on maybe on how how do you or how do I shape a new role that is not existing? Maybe not all of us become CTOs of cities, most likely not many of us, but in a smaller scale, we all have that challenge at hand. So what is your advice here?
Yes, that's such an important question. And, I was also the first CTO at Gray Advertising, senior product manager at Palm, and these roles didn't exist before I had them, right? And so I like to say I have invented every job I've ever had, in that, um, even in a well-defined role, if you're in a changing landscape, that role won't change. So trying to stick to your job description is probably not a good idea. Um, and someone saying, "Well, that's not my role to do,"
Yeah.
um, because what happens is the unknown, right? And so the number one thing that I always ask is, "What problem am I trying to solve?"
Mhm.
Right? That's even true of AI and, any new tool. What is the actual problem and how do we best solve that? So, I'll give you an example. There was a company that was looking to improve their development time and rapidly increase how many code drops they did. So they used a lot of, AI to help retool, reorganize the team, and they were creating more and more products in a much faster speed. And yet they have it did not improve their revenue. So they were simply building the wrong things faster, right?
Mhm.
So part of the point of what problem you're trying to solve is really, what is the business question? Right? And that alignment with the business, even the business of government, right? Understanding what is the outcome you're looking for, and then are we organized to do that? Um, has always helped me to define that role, the role that is needed, right?
Mhm.
And you're right. You don't always get a blank page of what your role is, but you do. It's up to you to understand, what business are we in? What are we trying to do? What is success? Um, and then aligning yourself to improve that, um, success. And then if you are actually improving revenue or increasing customer satisfaction or improving safety, reducing, accidents or whatever your goal is, then I don't think people are gonna get too mad if that wasn't your original, role, if you
Mhm.
figured out how to solve something.
Okay, so we all become more business people, right? So it is not possible anymore to hide behind your job description and say, I am coding, I do whatever is written in the ticket," because when you do that, AI will maybe do it better. But understanding and understanding the bigger picture and connecting to the business outcomes is now the way to move forward.
Absolutely. I know a lot of folks say to me, "Well, I'm the engineer, you tell me what to do."
Mhm.
That is absolutely, in this time of change, not gonna be helpful to you, because, you're it's important to be curious. Don't lose your curiosity.
True,
So
yeah.
I went to business school, so that in finance, so that I could, know what the people in the banks that I was going to go work for, because I'd gone from, tech and software to like mobile at Palm, and I didn't have a huge background in mortgages or, investment banking. So I studied those things just so that I could talk to, the people. And the same thing with, government. Study, where are the issues? Where's the most accidents, or who's got the best and lowest, grades in the schools? Like, really study your subject matter, because in a world where um AI can probably do a lot of the execution for you, what's going to be really valuable is your subject matter expertise.
Mhm.
Nothing's even, it shows up in data scientists as well. Data scientists have to be subject matter experts in whatever they're doing, whether it's, neurobiology, statistics, or, other medical areas, or, finance. You need to know, um, that's going to give you an edge if you actually understand the terminology of the sector you're in. It's
Mhm.
just like code. Sorry, computers can do that now.
And is it your advice to go to your favorite AI and just ask, "Hey, give me all the information I need to have for this specific subject?" Or what is your strategic approach on getting into new topics?
Yeah, well, look, it to me, when it comes to research, absolutely. I mean, I was the person who would go to the library, and then I was the
Mhm.
person who would search the internet. And now, yes, to do some research, I will absolutely use multiple, AIs, to figure out, what the right answer is. I don't trust them as much still to this day, the public free ones for sure.
Mhm.
Just because, um, I always cross check. I'm a big fact checker, so I'll also do my own research on something. Um, but I also use it as a tool to figure out where I need what book should I be reading?
Mhm.
What talks should I be listening to? And that's an area where, a trusted source of real, information is also gonna become more important as well.
Yeah. So what is your profession today? What is filling your days? What are you doing at the moment?
Well, I am now I have a consulting firm. It's called City Strategies. I actually started it right after leaving City Hall, and then I ended up starting Grasshopper Bank as my first project after City Hall. So, but co-founded a digital commercial bank here in the States, AI driven, where it could automate, compliance, right? Very important in banks and finance. And so I use all the knowledge that I have, and I advise startups and, of all sizes, on their AI strategy or their product strategy. I help them do a product roadmaps. I'm also an advisor in residence at EY, which is a
Mhm.
large consulting firm, global consulting firm. And so I work directly with the EY teams and clients. Also on that, I recently gave a talk about cybersecurity, in the age of AI, which is happening a lot right now. But then I also do some work around policy still because of the work I'd done in IoT and AI policy in the past. I do get asked to speak to, government groups, or, I was invited to speak at the UN next month, um, for some of the delegates there. My focus is on the human side of AI. So, I don't have a podcast like you, Paul, but I do have Substack where I put some of my speeches online so that people can read, if they miss the topic. So,
That is already answering maybe the next question. Where can people find you when I am working in a city and I need to get more input, or I need to have focus on the human side of AI for my startup? How can we contact you?
sure. Well, I have a website is citystrategiesllc.com, and my Substack is called Humanist Ex Machina,
Awesome.
um, which is a play on Deus Ex Machina, but it's really about the humans and the machine. And if I had to, you know, say one thing, it's really human knowledge is the most important um, piece of this in my 41 years since starting my, artificial brain company. It's still the same. It's human expertise and human ideas about community in the world are going to be the most important pieces in the world of technology.
Beautiful. And the technology and AI can accelerate our output now drastically when we stick to this human creativity and knowledge and curiosity. and when we take the challenge to build new roles and to find new ways forward. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. It was really a pleasure. As long as you don't have a podcast, you are always welcomed as a guest. We definitely need to have a follow-up episode with Gonche again. But thank you so much for taking the time today. It was a great pleasure.
It was a delight. Thank you so much for inviting me, Paul.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Is AI truly improving how your software gets built, or just adding complexity? At Vention, AI isn't an add-on. It's embedded into our software development lifecycle from architecture and coding through testing and release. Our engineers use it to cut friction, speed up progress, and raise quality at every stage. That's what we call the peace of mind promise. You focus on growing the product and winning your market while we handle the tech. Get software developers who build with you, not just for you, at ventionteams.com.